Hi guys, this is Liz. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Jen, and we're going to have a conversation today about habit building and how to use habit building in two different real life contexts. So, Jen, would you like to introduce a little bit about yourself and how we know each other?
Sure. Thanks, Liz, for that wonderful little introduction. Liz, you and I, we go way back from when we studied abroad in Costa Rica together. So I'm Jen, and I am an accent trainer. So I help people improve their clarity and confidence when they are speaking English. So usually I work with people who speak English as a second language or people who just want to improve their accent or change the way that they speak. And I want to clarify that accents are a perfectly fine thing. I speak another language with an accent, and the main goal is to speak clearly and confidently so you can communicate with others around you. So, Liz, tell me a little bit more about yourself and your background.
Well, so like you said, we met years ago studying abroad in Costa Rica, and I have since then gotten my master's degree in epidemiology. So I worked for years in epidemiology and primarily studying outbreaks of infectious diseases. But nowadays, my focus is more so on what we call like socially contagious diseases, diseases that don't necessarily spread between two people like a virus, but things like chronic diseases like diabetes or heart disease, things that are influenced by the way that you eat. So I have training as well as a plant-based nutrition specialist in the area of plant-based nutrition. So when I talk about socially contagious diseases, I mention those because that is one of the areas of focus where I am sort of combining that background in epidemiology and disease prevention with my approach of health coaching. Health coaching incorporates a lot of behavioral science and understanding why people do the things that they do, and when they want to improve their health, what can they actually do to make that happen in their life.
Awesome. So, sounds like you have so many really cool, so much cool background knowledge and experience that makes you really a good specialist in that area. So, bringing it back to our topic today of habit building, why is building a habit so important in health coaching?
Well, habit building is really important to health coaching because it is essential when you are making any change in your life to really take some time to think about what is going to make these changes actually sustainable. So many of us can relate to having a goal of making some sort of a change in our life, and that extends to any number of different changes. And then we set a really big goal and we expect that we're going to start doing that thing tomorrow, and that's just going to be our life from here on forward. And then we might do it for a couple of days and that habit tends to like fall away pretty quickly. So when I work with clients as a health coach, we are really thinking about what are the things that can actually make a habit or some sort of lifestyle change more sustainable. So there are a lot techniques that are incorporated into making habit changes sustainable. Obviously, habit building is a key tool in health coaching, but I'm curious if you can share a little bit more about how it's relevant to accent training.
Yeah, so accent training is essentially like training your brain, similar to as you said, to change the way that you are used to doing something. And in this case, it's speaking. So, like, speak in a different way. And that doesn't, when I say different, again, I want to clarify it doesn't mean like getting rid of your accent. It just means speak in a different way that makes you sound clearer or more confident and kind of trains your brain to speak more with more fluency. So that's kind of what I do when I'm working with a client is teaching them how to change the connection between the brain and the muscles of your mouth and things like the tongue and your lips, all that jazz. And so you're kind of training your mouth and your tongue to do different movement patterns than they're used to doing. And that's a little bit hard to change because you've been doing it your whole life like that, right? So, or maybe not your whole life, or maybe a long period of moving in that way. Or sometimes your mouth has never learned how to move in a different way, because when you're speaking a different language, not all languages have the same mouth movements. So that's a little bit about what accent training does and why it's important to kind of train habits to help train your brain to move your mouth in a different way.
So when you're learning to speak more clearly in a second language, then part of the habit building is just learning to move your mouth in a specific way. So you're making the sounds of that language more clearly.
Yeah, exactly. And I've had to do it myself when I speak Spanish. And I kind of like, when someone doesn't understand me, I kind of like for me, it's not totally automatic yet. I have a little ways to go to make that habit more automatic. But I can sort of turn on that habit and I think, okay, they didn't understand me. Let me adjust my pronunciation so that way they can understand me in a way that I know that they will understand me, versus with my accent that is a little bit more American. For someone who's not used to hearing someone with an accent, I try to make it a little bit easier for them to understand.
Well, as a Spanish speaker, also, I can definitely relate to that and needing to make little adjustments or to try and correct the way I speak in different ways in order to make sure that I am better understood.
Yeah, super. So I was actually thinking, because like with health coaching, I all the time am like thinking about my health and the way I eat. But I love to eat like salty foods and potato chips, popcorn, you name it. I love it. But I know that it's better in moderation. So I would like to cut it back. And I was wondering if maybe we could kind of like break down how you would help me to eat less potato chips or something like that.
Yeah, of course. So, as a health coach, if you're my client, typically when I see someone, there's a lot of background conversation about like why you want to make that change and what you've tried so far. But we're just going to, for the sake of time, we'll sort of pretend like I already know those things about you. And I just want to learn a bit more about what you want to do now, like what the change that you want to make. So you want to change your habit around eating salty foods like potato chips. What exactly is your goal in trying to make that change and to eat less of that or to eliminate that from your diet?
When you say what is my goal, do you mean like, I guess my goal is to be healthier,
Mhm.
I want to be giving my body like foods that will energize it instead of, make it feel slow, or yeah, just I want to feed my body with nutritious food instead of, you know, junk food.
Yeah. So you want to find a way that's going to be to feed your body where you're actually going to be nourishing yourself a bit better than you are if you're feeding yourself a lot of like potato chips in this example.
Exactly.
One suggestion that I might offer that a lot of clients find useful would be incorporating some sort of reward for yourself in order to help incentivize making this change. So in this example, could you think of something that might be a reward for you if let's say you're going shopping and you decide today I'm not going to get the potato chips? Is there something that you could do to reward yourself for that behavior change?
Yeah. It's a tricky topic, the reward, because immediately my mind goes, oh, ice cream, which is, against my goal. So the trick would be to find something that would be like healthy, but still satisfying, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Finding something that is a step in the direction that you want to go in.
Yeah. So kind of like going with the ice cream circle, but not choosing ice cream, but maybe like a fruit smoothie, like one of those. Like, I don't know, I don't normally buy drinks for myself. I think of those as more of a treat. Um, and I'm not talking about like, like soda type of drinks. I'm thinking like a juice, like a natural squeezed juice or a natural smoothie of some sort, that
Yeah.
type of drink.
And what would make that rewarding for you?
like it's rewarding because it's not something that I do all the time. It's rewarding because it tastes good. It's rewarding because um, it's special. Something that I don't. It's not something that it's part of my usual diet, but it's like a extra special thing.
Yeah. And then beyond that, if I can just add, there's the reward too that maybe doesn't come first thing to your mind because you're thinking more about like the pleasure of like enjoying something that tastes good, like replacing one thing that tastes good with another thing that tastes good. But there's also the reward for your body where instead of eating something that's not so healthy for you, you are enjoying something that does also provide you more of like nutritional benefit.
Yeah, you're right. Like a reward of I'm treating my body the way I want to treat it. That's a reward in itself. Yeah,
Yeah.
good point.
Well, that's just a short like summary of how we might use health coaching or trying to incorporate habit building. In this case, using some sort of reward in order to build a habit, it is just one technique that we can use to incorporate habit and lifestyle change within health coaching. But I'm curious if maybe you can walk me through some sort of example of how you might use habit building within accent coaching.
Yeah, of course. So tell me about like, is there a time that you feel like when you're speaking Spanish? Because I know that we both studied Spanish together in Costa Rica and I've learned so much more since then. Tell me about when you're speaking Spanish, is there any time, are there any times that you have communication difficulties or something that you would like to improve when speaking Spanish?
Yeah, well, so I have, since going to Costa Rica, I've traveled to a lot of other Spanish speaking countries and also lived in several other Spanish speaking countries. And the funny thing about that is that it sort of makes my Spanish such a weird blend where I'm using random slang from, well, not so much slang from Costa Rica anymore, but more recently I've spent a lot of time in Spain and Colombia. And so my Spanish sounds like a kind of a weird blend. And depending on where I'm at in the world, it can cause confusion for the people that I'm talking to, and also for me because I'm using a word that was very common in the country I was just in, and then I go to another country, and all of a sudden they don't understand me, and it's confusing to me where I start to doubt myself. So the question is just if you have any strategies for someone who wants to make themselves better understood when they're communicating in their second language, when it comes to something like dialect, where it's not necessarily that you are using the language wrong, you're just using a different version of it. Do you have any suggestions for someone that is challenged or is struggling with something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a challenge for people who come to the United States too, because there are so many different dialects spoken just in the United States or England or New Zealand. Everywhere uses different vocabulary. So I think the main thing for you, given that your goal is to try and just be understood wherever you are, you're not trying to kind of specialize or understand one specific dialect of Spanish. You just want to be a more flexible communicator, is what it sounds like to me. Is that correct?
Yeah, for sure. It's about just trying to be understood more in general with less issues just from crossing borders.
Yeah. So just given what we're talking about with habit building, so one piece of it could be like a mindset, a mindset shift. And that could be thinking like approaching crossing borders with different language barriers, like from a place of curiosity, like, oh, did I, like, you didn't understand, what does that word mean to you? Like when you say the word wrong and you get a sense of confusion and response, or maybe you didn't understand something and kind of like just being accepting from yourself, like, oh, okay, I didn't know that word, like I used a different word for it. And maybe clarifying, like, what does that word mean for you? Because for me, like, I don't know that. So it could also be a form of like self-study, of like kind of allotting maybe like 5 minutes of time a day if this is something that you really wanted to work on. Just like allotting 5 minutes a day of listening to different dialects to kind of familiarize your brain with different dialects and different accent patterns too, because that can be a challenge to kind of train your ears to hear different accents. And I know many language learners struggle with that whether it's English, whether it's Spanish, wherever. Maybe we'll take the example of like training your ears to listen to different dialects and different words that you might come across. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, of course. That's something that I confront quite a bit when I'm traveling.
Okay. So I would probably recommend like, I don't know, whatever feels reasonable for you. 5 minutes maybe feels like too much. Maybe it feels like nothing. I don't know. How much time do you think you would want to dedicate? I recommend less. I wouldn't overdo it. I wouldn't say I want to spend an hour a day because that is just not sustainable. How much time do you think that you would want to dedicate to that goal?
Let's start with 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay. So I would just try doing something called habit stacking. And like think of something that you do 5 minutes every day. Maybe it's like brushing your teeth, or maybe it's drinking your coffee in the morning. I don't know. Or maybe it's some time that you're already listening to something, like if you like to listen to podcasts in the car or listen to the radio in the morning. I don't know. When is the time that you're normally listening or listening to music or have some time just for yourself?
If I'm out in the evening going for a walk.
Okay, so maybe when you're in the evening walking, just try to listen to find a YouTube video or find whatever you like to watch, if it's podcasts or YouTube. I don't know, maybe you're not big on that. If it's maybe a podcast, and you don't have to listen to the whole thing. Just listen to 2 minutes and then try and once, see if there was any words that you understand, and maybe you could even practice what you would say in that situation if you were actually having a conversation with that person. Oh, I didn't know that word. Could you explain what it means? And that's just a way to kind of train your brain. This is more of a psychological training than as opposed to muscle training I was talking about, but that's kind of, it covers it all. Active training, it's so important when you're communicating to train not just your mouth muscles, but train your attitude as well. So I don't know. I would say listen to the podcast and then think about what you learned, and then maybe write it down. Well, you're walking, so maybe you're not going to write it down. You could maybe put a note on your phone or something.
Yeah.
And then you have learned a little bit more about a new dialect, and you kind of have that flexibility in your brain to know, when do I use this type of language versus this language.
And so, in other words, with the habit stacking, we're taking something that we already do, like for me, going for a walk is a part of my routine, and incorporating in just, I mean, with this case, 5 minutes of the new thing I want to incorporate, doing that just in 5 minutes alongside a habit that's already been an ingrained part of my life.
Exactly. Yeah. So then the idea is that it makes it easier to make that habit a little more automatic. And in this case, because you don't necessarily need to study for 5 minutes for the rest of your, life. That's not the habit that you're necessarily training. What you're kind of training is more that flexibility, that acceptance, and knowing that, okay, I'm learning different vocabulary, different dialects here when I'm going traveling. And kind of training yourself also to be a little more open to maybe having those conversations when people, are confused by something that you said that they've never heard in their dialect before, how in Spain they say coche versus in Colombia they probably say caro, so just kind of having those conversations with yourself makes it easier to have with other people.
I've certainly done that. I am walking around by myself speaking Spanish out loud. It's not a bad way to learn, but you might look a little crazy.
Yeah, I know. That's why you can just kind of do it with headphones on or whatever, if you don't want to have to talk out loud. But if you're in a space where it feels like a safe space to talk out loud, that's a great way to practice too.
Yeah. We've talked about 2 different strategies for building habits, using rewards or incentivizing a habit change, replacing it with something that is better for you or moves you in the direction that you want to go, and then habit stacking, where we are taking something that is already an ingrained habit for us and just adding on something small that moves us in the direction we want to go as well. So, should we wrap this up?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've learned so much about building habits, and I think the most important thing is just trying to personalize the strategy. It's not building habits is not a one size fits all. There's no, you know, this is what you have to do to build a habit. Like there are things that work for others that will not work for me, or things that might work for you that won't work for me. You know, so just trying to fit these goals and habits into your life, and that's how you'll see the best change that you're looking for.
That's a great way to sum it up. And I think we can leave our viewers with just one question, which would be, what habits have you been working on and what strategies have worked for you?